Alright folks, this is Joe's Video Games back with another quick little repair video. We know people have been asking us to see more repair videos, so I figured I'd show you this. This is some of the typical crap we run into. Every time you're working on a game, you run into all these little tiny problems that take forever to figure out. So I'm working on an Asteroids board, Asteroids game, and the board has this weird little fault. Notice the screen's too small, but we can adjust that out really easy. But check this out. See the little squiggly lines? I don't know how well that'll show up on the camera because vector monitors are kind of hard to film, but there's these little squiggly lines along the bottom there. Talking about here, 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 you know. And so we were trying to figure out what in the world is making it do that. Now, a couple little clues. The game plays fine, it's just whenever you get to certain parts of the screen, you get those squiggly little lines. Which is interesting. I can't quite figure it out yet, but it may be the monitor, it may be the board. But if you look on the top, it doesn't really do it as bad on the top, but on the bottom it does. And also, if you look close at them, when they do it, they're not in the wrong position that way. They're going over, but they're going up too far or down too far. So it's a problem with the Y circuit. It doesn't know where to put it up or down. Why? It's got the X right, but it doesn't have the Y right. So that's what we're working on. So I'll see if I can figure it out, and then we'll film another video and show you what we figured out was the problem. Alright folks, so step one of the luxuries afforded to us because we have a bunch of games, is that we actually have an Asteroids cocktail right now that works great. So what I did was opened it up, very simple, plugged in my board from the upright, and would you check it out? Same problem. Again, it's just on the bottom. You don't really see it on the top. So that conclusively tells us that it's definitely on the board. And in my opinion, it's in the Y section of the board, not the X section. So we're going to think about it a little bit and try a couple things, and we'll be back in just a second. Look what I've got. Got lucky on this one. You guys are going to think we staged this or something. So I started thinking about it. Like I said, when we stopped the last video, I'm going to think about this for a while because these things work really logically. So if you think about it, you can kind of understand what it's doing. So I was thinking, there's different parts of the board that draw the images on the screen, etc., etc., etc. But then the last thing it does is it amplifies the signal and sends the signal out. So since it was doing it on everything, like it would do it on the crosshatch that it was drawing, and then if you had an asteroid, whenever it got to that spot, the asteroid would distort a little bit. If your ship got to a certain spot, it would distort a little bit. And since it only... It's kind of confusing because, you know, it was equally spaced along the x-axis, but they never went to the wrong way x. You know, it never went too far to the left or too far to the right. It always went too far up, too far down. So I thought the Y is messed up. It doesn't know where to go up or down. It doesn't display in the right spot up or down. So I started thinking, well, it's probably the output, the Y output, whenever it displays the final image and sends it out to the monitor. And so there's these, there's a TL081 amp and a TL082 amp, but all they do is they make it kind of the size, I think, I don't completely understand it, but I think they handle the position of the whole image and they handle the size of the image. But since this was a problem that seemed a little more, to be honest, since it seemed a little more complex than that, there's a 4016 chip in there that does a couple things, and it's connected in 3 or 4 different places. So I decided, well, hell, I'll change that 4016 chip. So whenever I started looking at it, somebody had already changed it, and they had already changed the 2 op-amp chips too, in antiquity. The solder was really old on it and everything, so I just went ahead and started with that one first, put a new socket in it, put a new chip in it, and it fixed it. First shot. That's really good. Usually I replace 5 or 6 chips before we figure it out. So what I'll do is I'll adjust it out a little bit, and then I'll show you how it ended up being. Alright, so here's the video output section of the board. Someone had already changed all the stuff in the Y circuit. So they had already changed this, which is the DAC, the digital analog converter. It basically changes the signals that the board is sending into analog numbers that the monitor can read. So, or analog signals. So somebody had already socketed that, and the legs were all dirty. So I had already tried that, and it didn't fix it. So then it goes into this 4016, and then the 81 and 82 chips. And so I just said, well, let's try that one first. So I swapped it, and it fixed it. Check that out. Very cool. And there's also an X section over here that makes the left and right. So on each of these, you have a little knob that amplifies it, makes it a bigger size. So I'm going to mess with those a little bit and get that screen to look a little bit better. Alright, so we did kind of a preliminary adjustment of the screen. A couple things to look for. It's different on every game, but on Asteroids, we just make it about as big as we can get it. You don't want the lines going completely off the screen. But like on the top there, the cardboard is sagging slightly over the line. That's no big deal. And the bottom, it's right on the edge. And you can see in the corner, in the very corner, it's cutting it off a little bit. On Asteroids, it's not a big deal because there's no lines on the edge of the screen. So basically, that's just where the asteroids decide to enter. So you don't need it perfect. You could even make it smaller, but we just figured the bigger the better, right? America. Anyway, so if you look really close, you can see that the lines aren't completely straight. See how they're a little bit bowed? If they're that minor, they're fairly minor right now. If they're that minor, we usually don't mess with it. But there are some adjustments on the actual monitor deflection board that you can turn to make those a little better. You can line those up a little better, but when they're that minor, we just don't worry about it because the things are glued in place. So if you take the glue off, then it's just a pain. So we're going to leave it like that. We're going to switch it into game mode and see how it looks. And then this video is not over because there's another fault with it I'm going to show you here in a second. So I'm going to reach down in the cabinet here, put it in game mode so you can see it doing its thing. Bad reflection. You can see at the top, I probably do have to bring it down a little bit because the scores are off the screen. Let's see if I can do that while you guys are here. So we want to, well, if I can see it. There we go. We want to bring those in a little bit. Whoop, wrong way. So maybe like that. That's a little better. Focus. Well, if it'll focus on it for us. So you see the scores are on. I might even go a little more because that left one's still up a little high. But here's the deal. We're on free play. Thrust works, but the shooting just makes like a popping noise. Now the ship fire worked fine. You hear that? The pew pew pew. But my ship, I mean the UFO fire worked fine, but the ship fire does not work right. It's just a pop. So we need to figure that out. So be back in just a second. Alright folks, I don't know how well this will show up, but I pulled up the schematics on the computer and started looking at the sounds. So basically, like I was looking at the saucer fires, see this is the enable, this is the board telling the saucer to fire, and this is the board, this is the signal that comes out, the sound, the saucer fire sound. Now that goes later on basically to the output with all of the other sounds. So basically, this is the board telling it to do it, and then all of this circuitry makes the saucer fire sound. Now the reason I'm looking at that is because it's almost identical to the ship fire sound. Exact same thing. So here is the board telling it to make the ship to make the fire sound, and then here is where the actual fire sound is created. So what you've got here are just a few chips, like you've got this 555 timer. You've got this 4016, which is interesting because that's the same chip I just fixed the output with, right? 4016. And then, so now one thing to, if you're getting into this, one thing to keep in mind is that if you look, this chip L9 is the only one that's unique to just the ship fire sound. So L9 does the ship fire sound, and M8 does the saucer fire sound, right? So you might think that L9 would be the one to change, and the reason for that is because this 4016 chip here is also used to make the saucer fire sound. So you'd think if the ship fire sound was messed up and that chip was the reason why, that it would also mess up the saucer fire sound. It's possible for just like one pin of the chip to fail, but that's just what you would think. And then you look back here and check this out. L8, can you see it? LM324, uh-oh. LM324, LM324, LM324. So this is an amp chip. And you notice how it was doing that little click whenever I shot? Click, click, click. So what that tells you is that when I hit the button, the board was trying to make the sound, right? You heard a click. So what that tells me is that the ship fire enable signal was probably working. But I just know from working on all kinds of boards that usually if you've got a click or something like that on a sound missing, look for these op amps, and they're usually bad. And these op amps are notorious for going bad. LM324, the other one that's used a lot is LM3900, which is on the like Space Invaders and stuff like that. So the very first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to try to replace this chip, because I think that'll fix it. Just because if you're looking in a circuit and there's 10 types of chips and that's one of them, that's the one to replace first, because they go bad constantly. I mean, they go bad if you look at them. So I'm going to try it. I don't know if that'll fix it, but we'll see. I'm going to try that one first. So be back in just a second. Alright, now if you'll rewind about 20 seconds, you'll see me proclaiming to the world that I'm smarter than logic, and that I'm going to pick the 324 even though it's in both circuits and one circuit works and the other one doesn't, because I just know for a fact that those go bad all the time. So I swapped that one, wah, 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 and I was wrong, because I just guessed, right? I didn't use any deductive logic. So I went back and looked at the schematics again, and like I was saying, this timer chip is the only chip that's only in the ship fire sound. So all it does is make the ship fire sound. So the 4016 is also in the saucer fire sound, and that amp chip that I replaced is also in the saucer fire sound. Now those still could go bad. One pin could go bad. But 555 timers also go bad often. So I took it back out and replaced the 555 timer. And fixed my shooting sound. So there you go. So we just figured we'd film a little video and show you some of the little stuff we work through whenever we're working on these. There's still a couple of cosmetic issues with this game that we have to work on, but then we'll have a nice Asteroids for sale for somebody that has every little thing working well, that has the no little squiggly lines on the monitor, and that has every little sound working the way it's supposed to sound, like you remember it from 1979. So I hope you liked the video. If you like these repair videos, we don't do them as often as the other ones, but we do tons of videos here on our channel. Every time we get a cool game in, we film a little review of it and some gameplay footage, and then sometimes repair videos like this too. So subscribe to us below, and every time we put one up, which is usually weekly, a couple times a week. Oh, they got me. I got a score of 140 there, and still made the high score table. Check that out. It's almost like there's nothing else on the high score table. But we upload videos a couple times a week. And it's always cool stuff. You know, we've got an Asteroids here right now. We're working on a Space Invaders over there, a Donkey Kong Jr. So it's always neat older stuff. So subscribe to us, and we will see you on the next video. All right, folks, unfortunately we're back again. So what we did was we moved it, we got everything fixed up, and we moved it over into our showroom, and we let it run all day. We do that a lot because you're basically letting it burn in. Because the worst thing is when you sell a game to somebody, they put it in their house and then it breaks like a couple hours later. So the way you can combat that is when you get an old game like this that's been in storage for forever, that's had issues and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you just turn it on and let it run for a little while and see if anything's going to burn up, right? So it's probably been on, let me think, probably 7, 8, 9. It's been on about 12 hours since we fixed it, counting last night and then counting today. And I just noticed a few minutes ago that it messed up. Wah, wah, wah. So something burnt up. This is the grid. It's supposed to be straight, right? So the lines are supposed to be straight. You saw how it was yesterday. And these are supposed to be little zeros. And this is supposed to be a smaller little bunch of lines that you use to figure out the contrast, etc., etc. There's also 2 1s if you look real close right there, right? So what you've got here is, can you figure out by what we were talking about yesterday? Look at the look at this line here. Look what it's doing. It's going up. It's supposed to go straight up, right? So it's getting the upright, but every once in a while it goes too far that way or too far that way. Like the line, it shouldn't be over here, it should be over, you know what I mean? So it's screwing up the left-right. So it's something in the x-axis. Now, since the whole screen's doing it, I don't know. It's kind of got me thinking that it's the exact thing it was yesterday. It's something in the output stage, because everything's screwed up. You know? So I don't know. So we're gonna mess with it a little bit. I'll probably do some of that first, the x-axis output stuff, and see if that fixes it. So this is just another example, by the way, of why these games cost more than some people think they should. Because if you go through them and you get everything working the way it should, it takes a while, and you got to keep messing with it and keep messing with it and keep messing with it, and eventually you get it where every little problem, every chip that wants to fail goes ahead and fails, and you fix it and figure it all out. So we had a perfectly good working game an hour ago, and now it's messed up. So we'll fix it again, and I'll be back whenever we figure it out. All right, folks, so we got time to look at the schematics again, like we were doing the other day on the other part. And there is, again, I was thinking that it was in the X direction, right, in the X section. So if you look at these schematics, all of this over here is stuff involving the how it creates kind of the Y image. So X and Y position counters. The reason I kind of decided to look in this area is because it was so completely even. Like every little thing was off at the same increment, the same direction. You know what I mean? The entire screen had the same issue all the way across it, very evenly. And before, whenever we were looking at the one that was just the output, it was only on like the bottom part of the screen, and it was kind of a little worse over here than it was at the top, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's just kind of a hunch, but so I figured I'd just look at this first because I could use the logic probe for it. We've got a train outside. Ignore the train. So, there's an X and Y position section of the board, and these counters are known for going bad all the time. So, again, I thought it was the X position, so I ignored the Y position part. And the X position part, the way it works, let me zoom in on it a little bit, is you get information from previous parts of the board that go into all of this and go down here into these counters. All of that seemed fine. And then it puts out these signals at the bottom, UMD, AC, X1 through 11. And that goes over here to this, UNM, DAC, X1 through 10. So these chips here get a signal, go into here. The counters put out their signal, which goes into here. These counters these chips put out their signal, which goes into here, and then comes out here. So I think this is just a buffer chip. I don't know that for sure, but I think so. Usually whenever you've got just a bunch going in and the same exact signal going out, or going out inverted, it's some kind of buffer or something. So anyway, it's just to make the signal stronger. So anyway, this chip, everything checked out. So all of these signals were there because they're coming out of the counters. All of that was fine. All of these signals were there, and all of those were there. And then when I got to here, all of these signals were here, but this one was missing. DACX5. So the way I put the logic probe on the board, and all of these were pulsing like they should. The inputs, not the one that's tied high there, or I guess that might be tied low. I don't know. I forgot. I was just looking at these inputs here. All of these were pulsing, and the outputs were pulsing. And by pulsing, it means that it's going high and low really fast because it's sending a signal. And then on this one was pulsing, which is the input. This one was pulsing. This one was pulsing. This one was pulsing, but this one was stuck high. This one was pulsing, this one was pulsing, this one was pulsing, blah, blah, blah. So whenever you got over here to this chip, whenever you got down to, so all these were pulsing. When you got down to DAC X5, it was stuck high because it was high coming out of this chip. And then the output over here was stuck high because it was high coming out. It was high coming in. So no pulsing, no activity on that one. So what that led me to believe was somewhere between here and here, the DAC X5 was something, one of these two chips was likely holding it high. So I just went with the first one. So I replaced this chip, and it fixed it. So there we go. I got lucky 3 times on the, well, I guess on the one I had to do 2 chips, but I got lucky and fixed 3 different errors pretty quickly on this one. So they're kind of, these Asteroids boards are kind of fun to troubleshoot because they're very logical. Like, it makes sense what it's doing, and you can figure out by kind of looking at the picture what you think might be the issue, etc., etc., etc. They're not fun whenever they keep breaking, but I think this one's probably going to calm down. So we're going to button it all back together, and we're going to let it run all day tomorrow. Just make sure everything's cool, nothing else burns up, and then it'll be ready for somebody's game room. So there you go. I hope you liked the video. If something else breaks, I'll do like an addendum to it or something. I'll add another little part, but hopefully that'll be it. So subscribe to us below. We will see you on the next video.